Selamat siang, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Southeast Asia Internet Governance Forum. I hope everyone is doing well and having a great day. My name is Nurma Fitrianingrum. I'm from DIFA Foundation. Welcome everyone, and in this rather hot afternoon here in Jakarta, we will be having a discussion in the issue of data governance accountability during COVID-19 pandemic. Thus, because it's quite hot, and I assume that it's the same with other area in Southeast Asia, so I suggest you to get a glass of water before we start the discussion so we can stay hydrated during the forum. Before further introducing about today's discussion and the speakers, first let me to read the host rules and or the code of conduct of this online meeting. First, please make sure that your device has stable internet connection. Second, please rename or name your Zoom ID with the name underscore your affiliation, for example, civil society, academic, or government. And then please turn off or mute your microphone during the session, and hopefully you can also stay till the end of the session. For participants with good internet connection, we hope that you can turn on your camera, your video, and use the virtual background that can be downloaded in the chat room. And for the committee has the rights to expel any participant from the meeting for violating the rules and or act inappropriately. So please follow the rules so we can have a good, productive, and nice discussion this afternoon. And not to mention this particular session about data governance discussion in the time of the pandemic is brought to you by the partnership between DIFA Foundation and also Center for Innovation and Innovation Policy and Governance, CIPG. First, let me explain the aim of this session here is to establish regularized discussion on data governance, especially during unprecedented pandemic time. We've been living with COVID in this pandemic for almost 1.5 years. and it has affected a lot of aspects of our lives, and particularly our digital activities. Since the pandemic, all of us are forced to shift our life from direct activity or offline activity to online. And also with the government efforts to control COVID spread, it's also become normal, quote unquote, for us citizens to be monitored using applications such as tracking or tracing, and also being required to share more information and our data to the government agencies and also private sectors, for example, testing laboratories and also hospital. And oftentimes it's unclear, like the policy or the regulation within the government agencies, and also those government with a private institution about how they manage, use, and protect our data. In Indonesia yesterday, it has been reported also that there was a data leak that from the eHealth application, it's owned by the Ministry of Health, that the data we put there, apparently it's kept in the server that relatively unsafe. So I hope that today's discussion will be lively one, interesting one to discuss the whole issue, and also recent incidents such as this data leaks. First, let me introduce the moderator. Today's discussion will be moderated by Mr. Arthur Glenn Mail. He is a country manager in Indonesia at Positium, previously worked at Open Data Lab Jakarta, and recently he joins Positium Mobile Location Data for Social Goods. Mr. Mail is a digital technology for development specialist and researcher with more than 70 years of experiences in Indonesia and Asia Pacific region. He is also experienced in building partnership and advocacy with key stakeholders in digital technology innovations for socio-economic development. And in our discussion later, we will be joined by two speakers or discussants. The first one is Mr. Vino Lucero, Project and Communications Coordination from Engage Media. Mr. Vino is an investigative reporter based in Manila. He has been joining Engage Media to coordinate internet freedom, digital rights, and digital safety activities in Asia and Pacific region. Mr. Lucero was a finalist in 2017 and 2019 for the Free Press Unlimited Newcomer of the Year Awards for his reports on Philippine politics, governance, freedom of information, war, and on drug, election, and other topics of public interest. And the second speakers, we have Ms. Clara Esti. She is a senior research associate at Center for Innovation Policy and Governance, CIPG. Ms. Clara is currently a senior researcher with educational background in communication studies. She has been working with CIPG for more than 8 years. She has interest to explore various topics ranging from media, the constitution of public sphere, communication mapping, social mapping, creative economy, innovation, and also development policies. Without further ado, I will offer the screen and the time to our moderator, Mr. Arthur. Please, time and screen are yours. And happy.
All right. Thank you, Norma, for the sort of brief overview and also the kind introductions. Good afternoon, and thank you to everyone for attending this session, both on-site in Bali and also via Zoom. A special thanks to also TIVA Foundation, CIPG, uh, Ministry of Communication and Information Technology of the Republic of Indonesia, and also Southeast Asia IGF team for organizing this very important session. So, ladies and gentlemen, data has played a major role in government's efforts to combat the effects of COVID-19 pandemic. So, as we have seen, tackling the impact of the pandemic, both in health and other sectors, depend on data that is available, timely, actionable, and also reliable. So after 18 months into the pandemic, for most of us in this region, we will reflect on various practices of using data in public sectors whilst ensuring robust data governance framework. We will also look back at the use of digital applications during the pandemic and how they have affected public today. And then by taking the wider view, we would like to see how these practices can be translated into improving accountability of public sector data governance in ASEAN countries. So you have been introduced to our two distinguished speakers who will share their perspective on data governance accountability from their countries, as well as in Southeast Asia region, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. But we wanted this session to be more interactive, so by asking you to participate as well actively in this session. So before we listen to the presentation later, I think it will be good segue to basically invite you to share your own thoughts on our topic of discussions today. So I can see that we have about 37 participants in the Zoom. Perhaps there are others on-site in Bali. So I will just stop for about 10 seconds to let our colleague from TIVA to show us the sort of Menti questions for our survey for us. If you can show it, please. And what you have to do is, if you can kindly click, if you have the link, so you'll have the link on the chat box. So if you can kindly click the link available now in the chat box, and you have the questions there. You will find the question there. And we wanted to know your opinion on what you think, why data governance accountability matter to better govern public data and internet landscape in general in Southeast Asia, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I will just repeat one more time. The question is, why does data governance accountability matter to better govern public data and internet landscape in Southeast Asia, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic? So if you go to the Menti, or by clicking that link on the chat box, you can type your answer there, preferably just a short sentence, and I'll give you about 5 minutes for everyone to type and submit their answer so that we can see the results on the screen, I hope, very soon. All right, so 5 minutes start now. All right, we have answers coming in to gain public trust, I suppose. So if you could share your opinion, perhaps, basically before you coming into this session, you probably have some idea in mind on why data governance accountability matter in governing public data or internet landscape in Indonesia. So please. Yes, yeah, we have more answer coming in. Said protect citizen rights, to give accurate informations as well as gain public trust. Trust is really important. So our participants mentioned them twice here. Do you have more? Yeah, yeah, it's perfectly fine to write in Indonesia. It's also okay. Nggak apa-apa, bisa ditulis dalam bahasa Indonesia juga. Sangat tulisannya terpotong di layar saya. Fuji mungkin bisa dinaikin ke atas ya. So perhaps if you could scroll up, Fuji, a little bit. So okay. That one is better, yeah. The previous one. Here. All right, okay, so it's scroll up automatically. So it's very important for open and transparent government, so deliver essential public service, so timely delivery of public service. Without data governance, it will be chaotic. Cause in pandemic, public get informations from the internet, so the public need to get updated news and accurate data. So there are more about, so data accuracy is important. There are also element of trust. They're important that because public get the sources, data sources from the government. So these are all key elements for having a accountable data governance. Actually, I was asked by the organizer to invite at least 2 participants to perhaps raise your hands, perhaps by clicking raise hand button, and perhaps you could open your mic and also your video to basically share your or elaborate your answers to all of us. So anyone would like to share more about their answers? So if I can get 2 volunteers from the participants or from the audience, please. It can be here from the Zoom, or it can also be from the on-site from Bali. Please, if you would like to speak up on some of your answer, you can raise hand, and then perhaps I can see who is willing to participate. Yeah, so clear roles and responsibility. Yes, please. Do we have any volunteers from the audience? Sorry if I miss someone, you can just open the mic. So do we have a volunteer? No. All right. Okay, all right. I don't think we have. Is it correct? All right. But we have received a lot of answers from your sites. Basically, looking at potential also harms to the individuals. Also, people mentions about trust and the importance of protecting personal privacy. So these are all good reasons, I think, for us to have sort of transparent and accountable data governance that basically govern public data as well as internet landscape in Indonesia. So now we can move actually to our main agenda. So we have our two speakers who will give or will share their perspective on the current data governance in their country as transpired during the COVID-19 pandemic. They will also reflect on what has worked well and what can be improved in terms of data governance, both in Indonesia, in the Philippines, or in the regions. So during the presentations, you are welcome to submit your questions on the chat box. And by the end of the presentation, we will discuss them together. So without further ado, I will invite our first speaker, Vino Lucero, who is a project and communication coordinator at Engage Media based in the Philippines. Vino, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much for that very wonderful introduction to the session, Glenn. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending this session. So I'm in the more rural part of the Philippines, so please, advance apologies when it comes to the background noise of the animals, like the roosters. Yeah, but thank you so much to the Southeast Asia Internet Governance Forum team and the DIFA Foundation for the invitation to be able to speak during this session. And I, as mentioned by Glenn, I will be sharing about data governance, accountability in the pandemic for the case in the Philippines. So let me quickly start sharing my screen. Okay, I hope you can see my presentation now. So yeah, so when it comes to the situation here in the Philippines, when it comes to Philippine data governance and privacy issues, it is important to take some context as to the situation of data governance and privacy before the pandemic. It's quite important because it definitely gives context as to how are we faring during this COVID-19 response. Yeah. So the context, pre-pandemic, we have very poor information systems when it comes to the Philippine government. So if you've been working as a journalist or part of civil society here in the Philippines, what you will notice is that most government agencies still have paper-based information systems. So there is very few government agencies that you will see which will have like very sophisticated or comprehensive information or database systems, those that will that can facilitate data sharing among other relevant agencies and even within departments under that agency. Yeah. So it is very rare to the point that if you are going to file a Freedom of Information request, most of the time there is the need for it to be filed and processed in that will need paperwork, because the information that will be needed is not necessarily available digitally already or is in machine readable format. So what they do is they process your request and then maybe digitize or type, and then unfortunately when they provide it back to you, it's also in PDF format, so it will not be machine readable anyway. There is also this limitation when it comes to in-house tech for government agencies in the Philippines. Most of the time, if there is a tech-based tool that is needed for the government agency, or there is a need for a certain agency to improve its database system or its information system or even just its website, the go-to way for it would be to do public procurement and hire an external contractor instead of like hiring permanent positions that will be focused on tech or database management. So they hire external contractors to meet the tech needs. But of course, the difficulty here is that once it has been delivered fully and there is need for maintenance, there is very little room to do that because, of course, there is the end of the contract already when it comes to the development of whatever tech-based need that is. So that is also a difficulty. So if you can notice, a lot of the information systems by Philippine government agencies, it is definitely noticeable that it needs improvement. Yeah. And lastly, we also have a good data privacy law in practice. It's already in place. It has been passed in 2012. But when it comes to the implementation of it, it's definitely something that can be improved. And that manifests actually when it comes to how data has been handled and processed amid the COVID-19 pandemic. So, okay. When it comes to COVID-19 data policy and governance, we have several points that we can highlight. The first one would be the slow start when it comes to it. It can definitely be connected to the tone from the top or from the executive part of the Philippine government, wherein at the start of the pandemic, there is a bit of a denial as to how COVID-19 is really a serious public health issue and how we should actually act with urgency when it comes to it. So when it comes to setting up data systems that is related to COVID-19, that happened months and has been established months after we started doing community lockdowns or quarantines here in the Philippines. So unfortunately, when we talk about data governance and COVID-19, much of the first few weeks and months are not really that well documented when it comes to data and information. Yeah. Aside from those, of course, captured by the media and by civil society efforts. Data governance is also treated as an afterthought. So of course, the main priority for most government agencies would be to do direct relief and response when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic needs. But also, when it comes to establishing good information systems, it is not something that has been shown due priority by national and local governments. So, given that we had a slow start when it comes to doing open data initiatives related to COVID-19 cases, take for example, in the early months of the pandemic, we're just getting aggregate data. But now, almost 2 years in the pandemic, we have definitely improved. There is that COVID-19 data drop already that's happening. So we get daily updates about national and subnational data when it comes to COVID-19 cases information and how we're faring when it comes to the response. And lastly, there is also that challenge when it comes to balancing the truth that the data is showing and political narratives. So just for context, we are having a national and local election this coming 2022. So we will be electing new national leaders, including the president, vice president, and a new set of 12 senators. Yeah. So of course, there is that interest to spin data and available information to show that the country is winning the fight against COVID-19. So actually, there is a memorandum circular that has been released by the Presidential Communications Operations Office asking certain agencies to actually highlight the good things, yeah, when it comes to how the government, the current government, is dealing with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. So something that is unfortunate for our situation. And of course, we also have, because of the data governance issues, we also have the direct data issues. So a few months ago, there is an issue when it comes to the COVID-19 data drop that is being released by the Department of Health. And there were cases wherein some patient numbers who are already declared dead seemed to be resurrected and became alive again. So there were some academe representatives and civil society representatives have pointed those inconsistencies. At the local level, there is also that issue when it comes to leaking patient data, which sometimes cause alienation or being ostracized in the community, yeah, especially if a certain member of your family is diagnosed to be positive of COVID-19. So this is definitely a privacy and, of course, a community issue as well. And for the data handlers, not just when it comes to contact tracing, yeah, even for vaccination and other data sets related to COVID-19, the data handlers have very little training when it comes to data privacy. Most of those who are being asked to handle contact tracing are just job order employees. So they will be there for maybe 6 months unless they're renewed. And yeah, there's very little stake when it comes to investing for capacity development when it comes to their appreciation of data governance policies and data privacy. Okay, so I wanted to take time to focus about the issues when it comes to contact tracing. So in the Philippines, supposedly, we have a main contact tracing application, which is staysafe.ph. June of last year, it has been reported by Rappler that there are privacy issues when it comes to the privacy notice of staysafe.ph because they have very vast, they are asking users of the application to approve very vast use of the data being collected. And then at the same time, when it comes to the implementation of staysafe.ph, it definitely has not been used that well on a national and subnational scale. This caused some local governments to actually start their own contact tracing initiatives because there is the difficulty when it comes to data sharing between the national government and the local government units. So while there is supposedly a main application for contact tracing, sometimes local governments revert to actually just doing manual contact tracing instead because staysafe.ph is not being used that widely by most. And then another issue is when it comes to the data custody of those information collected by staysafe.ph. So in the past months, it has been reported in the media that the data collected from this supposedly main contact tracing app has not been turned over to government servers. So it is still with the company Multisys that they're the one that's keeping the data for now, which is not really good practice when it comes to data custody. And then we have issues when it comes to patient and citizen privacy. Of course, we have tech transgressions from corporations. So take, for example, in the past, there are local governments that have worked with tech companies for different needs. Yeah, may it be, take for example, improvement of their website or a more modernized version of bus riding system. So I have an example here, which is this one. So one of the local governments in the Philippines partnered with a company that is mainly doing business in the transportation sector. So the name is Ube Express. So what they did was they partnered first for mobile vaccine clinic, which is definitely sensible, you know, because they have the infrastructure, they have the buses to actually do and facilitate the mobile vaccine clinic. But at the same time, they extended this partnership to include using the Ube Express system for vaccine registration. So, given that that is not actually the space, or Ube Express is kind of new to that field when it comes to vaccine registration or facilitating that kind of information or database system, it is definitely a chaos when it comes to the actual implementation. So what happens is that residents of that specific local government go to the Ube Express, vaccine.ubeexpress.com to actually register for vaccine, but they do not get any confirmation, nor do they get any schedule to actually do the vaccination. Instead, what happens is that they just sign up, then they get a QR code from this website, and they need to show it when they do walk-ins instead, which is not the best case scenario, especially for limiting mobility, and we have social distancing guidelines. So we have that situation going on for local governments. And there are also similar situations in other local governments, because one thing when it comes to dealing with local governments is that they are more likely to approach people they have worked with in the past, regardless of if they are suitable for the tech need for the specific situation. And then there's also that issue when it comes to privacy and FOI amid the pandemic. So in the past, there has already been difficulties when it comes to valuing the people's right to information, and then at the same time protecting people's privacy. That has been quite an issue given the mention of the COVID-19 patient data leaks earlier in this part of my presentation. And then at the same time, there is also difficulty when it comes to accessing information related to COVID-19. So definitely there is data out there that's being published by several local governments related to COVID-19 response and relief. But when requesting information that are more specific or granular, there is difficulty when it comes to that, and definitely we experience delays receiving the requested data. So there's also that issue for vulnerable sectors. So take, for example, when it comes to urban poor communities, they have much more difficulty accessing the information they need, maybe related to public services or just community level statistics when it comes to the situation of COVID-19 cases. And then at the same time, there is very little awareness when it comes to how privacy can be valued, especially those who are not that exposed with privacy discussions, especially the marginalized communities. Yeah, so that is also a challenge. Yes, there is definitely some data available out there. So we have the COVID-19 DOH data drop that's being published daily by the Department of Health, but unfortunately we don't have access to real-time data, probably because most, if not all, hospitals are not that equipped to do real-time reporting that can be connected to the DOH information systems, the current DOH information systems. And then, of course, just to close, there is going to be a discussion about multi-stakeholder action, right? So civil society has been doing its part. First, early on in the pandemic, there are certain tech-based nonprofit organizations that are part of the civil society who tried to collaborate with the government and contribute to take, for example, building a contact tracing application or setting up the vaccination system for national and local government. But unfortunately, more most of the civil societies were edged out when it comes to those discussions. What happened instead is that civil society organizations are setting up awareness campaigns or activities that will mobilize people to push for improved systems related to COVID-19 response and relief. There's also that effort to actually complement existing COVID-19 response and relief efforts. So take, for example, it was internationally reported that several volunteer groups started the concept of community pantries, wherein they pull in their supplies and their funds to actually buy groceries and necessary items for those who are not able to sustain their basic needs amid the pandemic due to unemployment or not enough support from local governments. So yeah, we already have that. And the challenge also for government and tech sectors would be to introduce well-grounded policies to address these issues. So higher awareness when it comes to the required data privacy level, when it comes to dealing with data, that's something that we need to highlight at this point in the pandemic. Okay, so I guess that's it for my part. I look forward to hearing questions or clarifications during the next parts of this session. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Vino, for sharing your perspectives on these topics. So I guess as you have heard from Vino, some of the issues and key challenges found there in the Philippines are basically related to some of the common issues that we found in countries, low and middle income countries with regards to data governance, such as, for example, data availability, granularity of the data. So even though the data is available, it doesn't have that much of granularity that useful to cover different groups basically in the community. There are also issues with data privacy as well, which is very important. But I also would like to highlight key points that Vino mentioned about the importance of multi-stakeholders collaborations. So I think in this during the pandemic, building data partnerships with all stakeholders can help leverage digital solutions, for example, by private sectors, promote publication of data, produced by the government or even the non-government organizations such as CSO or research institutions. But also it's important, like Vino mentioned, about having some kind of legal frameworks for this kind of multi-stakeholder collaborations for to ensure effectiveness and efficiencies of all these collaborations. So before we go to our next speaker, I just wanted to remind all the participants, all of you, that during the presentations you are welcome to submit your questions in the chat box, and right after the presentation we will also discuss them in details. So our next speaker is Clara Esti. So like you have heard, Clara is a researcher at the Center for Innovation Policy and Governance, or CIPG, in Indonesia. Clara will share her reflections on the governance during pandemic in Indonesia. So over to you, Clara.
Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for joining us in this discussion. I will just get through my talking points here. As Norma has mentioned in the opening of the session, we are all aware about the new case of data breach. Also, as Glenn has asked us earlier, why data governance accountability is important. And for me, when I say data practice in Indonesia, I think it is become really important because it helps citizens, ordinary citizens like us, to sustain our trust to the government, because they have a lot of our data, and it's very specific data that we entrusted to the government. And also, actually, data governance will help our show how public sector actually respects citizens' rights. In the end, it also helps them to deliver the public service, for example, for accurate targeting, and so on and so on. In Indonesia, well, I will just go through this. Pre-pandemic, we can say that, okay, we have e-government regulation, we have a one Indonesia, but it was set up in 2019 and has not been implemented. Also, we, Indonesia, do not have specific law on privacy and personal data protection. That's why now we are facing data leaks or data breach case, we actually don't know what to do, except, ordinary citizen, you cannot do anything except what government has said, like, erase or uninstall the app, but we cannot really sure what will happen next, what will be the follow-up of the government, and how this incident of data breach can affect us, can affect our life. And also, pandemic, we can see that institutional capacity, both in national and subnational level, is rather limited. I will go through this in detail next. And then the pandemic struck us in Indonesia, and we can see that there was denial in the beginning from the government, rather than having set a plan to counter the pandemic or to handle and control the pandemic. The denial is everywhere. We can find it in the news. And even after the pandemic, now it's like 18 months, we cannot see a very clear data governance framework in place regarding COVID-19 related data. Even until now, we can see that COVID-19 related data between national and subnational still has gap. Also, lack of transparency, as just scroll the news from the media and you can see that, this province, this region said they do not have death on COVID-19, but we also read from the social media that the medical workers say, I have this number of death cases due to COVID in my own healthcare facility. So this kind of thing keeps on going, keeps on happening. But luckily, Indonesia has civil society initiatives that come to help, and that way, citizens can also monitor the data in the COVID-19. I will share just some of our findings. It is actually an ongoing research, and it's just case study in West Java province and Pontianak. Pontianak is a city in West Kalimantan. We see in detail 5 public services in the health and education sector, from contact tracing and then healthcare services, vaccination, and then internet subsidy for distance learning, and the policy to reopen the school. As we can see from our case study, in the health sector, data updating is not fast and precise enough to respond to the needs of public services, especially during the pandemic. There are also inefficiency and potential errors because the medical workers sometimes like puskesmas or healthcare facilities, primary healthcare facilities at the district level, they do not have special staff or a special staff or designated staff to input patients' data, and this turns to be detailed data that is reported to the local health office, and then because they have to into application or information systems, it takes a very long time and can produce errors. And this actually adds the burdens of the healthcare workers. While in Pontianak, the availability of data is more varied. They admit that yes, it is available and it is updated regularly, but yeah, there are some places where they cannot update them regularly. Even they cannot fill all the assigned forms. This has become the major problem when we talk about data gap in national and subnational level. While in the education sector, okay, the data is available and it is updated, but data sharing is limited. Thus, it hinders the local or the subnational education office to decide actually which school should be allowed to reopen or not reopen, and how to actually base their decision on the actual data, because sometimes the school is updating the data just like every 6 months. So when we have, like now, the situation is changing rapidly. Just 2 weeks we have restriction, and 2 weeks later the school is allowed to do limited face-to-face learning. The school cannot catch up actually with this quick changing situation, and that's when the education office at the provincial and municipal level like become how do they will base their decision to let this one school open and then other school not allowed to open. Also, we found both in West Java and Pontianak, sometimes the institution's understanding on their roles in data governance varies. For example, we found Puskesmas, it is primary healthcare in the district level that say they are the data owners. Well, actually, they are the data processor. This understanding can help us understand how they act or how they take the responsibility in terms of data governance. Also, primary healthcare and hospitals apply different standards on data security and accountability. Same as schools, we found that, for example, because the operator of data or the one that should input all the data of the school to the central data, they can change. They are not a dedicated person, and they can change it username or word to access the data can actually still be owned by the previous person who is responsible for the data, and the process can it has become questionable on how you manage, how the school can manage or can assure the security of the students' data and teachers' data that is being inputted to central data. Then also human resource for data governance is lacking in terms of qualification and number. We found it in West Java and Pontianak. And this has become very challenging because during this pandemic, like healthcare facility, they have more burden. They have to attend the patients, the ill patients, while at the same time they still need to carry on their regular duties. But also they have additional work, that is to update the data regarding COVID-19, be it from contact tracing or the vaccination process. This is a burden to the healthcare workers. And also in Pontianak, they frankly admitted that finally they get support from volunteers just to do data input. Since there are so many applications, and the condition in education sector is pretty much the same. Things mostly do not have dedicated the data governance. I think that's all from me in terms of then what I then I don't know. I really want to pretend to be dead and then hide and wait for this chaotic moment to pass, but well, let's not do that. I think we need to discuss the issue, and I think here multi-stakeholder collaboration is very important because in case of Indonesia, we see that actually it is civil society initiative that has helped us to build or to develop a better data governance that constantly give inputs to the government, and we can see actually improvement both from Ministry of Health and from government on the data governance. I will end my presentation here and hope this will spark more questions.
All right. All right. Thank you, Clara, for your presentations. Clara has described some of the challenges and in terms of governing health data and also education data sectors in Indonesia. I think they cover broad range of aspects, most of the challenges, in terms of leadership, capacity, regulations, as well as data infrastructure as well. But I understand from speaking to Clara that this is still an ongoing research. So I think please stay tuned. I think for more updates from Clara and also CIPG team regarding output of the research. Okay, I think we have a couple of questions already coming. I think so far in my notes there are two questions. Just to remind you, if you have questions, you're welcome to type your questions in the chat box, and we will compile it, and then we will discuss them later. But so far we have at least two already. The first questions, I think it's better for to both speakers. So the first questions, so from Dinda Kintani. So Dinda asks about, there are lots of data collected and also shared during the pandemic. And I think here Dinda says some of them, can fall into the hands of, bad people, terrorists, for example. So the main question here is, to what extent the Indonesia government, or in this case also Philippine governments and other Southeast Asian countries, have sufficient protections of this data? All right, so perhaps I can go with Fino first and then Clara, please.
Okay, thank you so much, Glenn. So for the Philippine context, I think what's the big difference between Indonesia and the Philippines is that we have already an established Data Privacy Act that will definitely cover situations like that, and will put penalties not just to those who have illegally obtained those kind of personal identifiable or very sensitive information, but also to the supposed data custodians who failed to protect the data and information of those individuals affected. So we have that in place, and actually currently there is an effort to update those penalties. So at this point, the current penalties range from around 500,000 to 5 million pesos, Philippine pesos. So that is already quite a lot. But given that the discussion of data privacy and protection in the digital space is definitely on the rise here in the Philippines, they wanted to increase so that there will be more responsibility, and data custodians will be more careful when it comes to protecting the data they collect. Yeah, that's it for me. Thanks.
All right, Clara?
Okay, I will answer for Indonesia. We have actually Satu Data Indonesia or One Data Indonesia and e-government or sistem pemerintahan berbasis elektronik. But here in Indonesia, we does not have specific law on privacy and data protection. We have information and transaction, electronic information and transaction, or ITE law, but it's not enough, or it is not adequate to protect privacy of the citizens. And then, yeah, Indonesia, because there is no specific law in that, and how can I say it? Actually, all citizens do not really know how to ask the government or other parties to be responsible to our data that has been collected. as far as I know, now we have a draft on personal data protection, but yeah, it is still not law. So in terms of data privacy and personal data protection, there is no clear guidance on how it will be implemented. Yeah, I think that's my answer. But if you talk about the use of data in the public sector, then actually e-government and One Data Indonesia can be used as the guidelines, although they both of the regulations do not specifically mention about the privacy of the citizens and how uh, personal data or personally identifiable information from the citizens be secure to be stored and all the digital rights of citizens.
Yes. Right. Thank you, Clara. Yes, so that's right. So some of the regulations, especially I'm speaking of the regulation in Indonesia, some of uh, the existing government regulations, like government regulations on e-commerce, also regulates how data has to be stored and processed in depending on who is whether it is a private or also public operators. But for sure, yeah, we still need personal data protection law that basically ensure protections of individual rights concerning the data. So we have another questions. This is also to both speakers. From Katrina. So the question from Katrina Sohanda. In the context of decentralization, so in the decentralization system, like in Indonesia and the Philippines, we have, so how is the data governance standards is established, for example? What are the challenges in establishing such data governance standards in the context of decentralized system like in the Indonesia and the Philippines? So I'll start with Clara first, since currently you are doing a research on so many local governments in Indonesia. So please, Clara, and then Vino.
Okay. Yeah, Indonesia has. I think I like to look at myself, right? Indonesia has One Data Indonesia, and it is actually provide guidelines at the national level on how to manage data, even to produce data, especially for public sector. But I think the most challenging parts or most challenging stage is in the implementation, since we have One Data Indonesia in 2019. So, and we got pandemic in 2020, and the implementation of the One Data Indonesia has not been very smooth, if I may say so, due to the pandemic, and also because if you remember, since the pre-pandemic, there is institutional lack. The institutional capacity, especially on the data governance, is rather limited. This might sound cliche, but from our case study in West Java, we can even see that even at the provincial level, the process of ensuring the data governance comply to the regulation, and also having all municipal level have a good coordination with the provincial level, it is still challenging. Not to mention the gap on data infrastructure that exists in only one province. So I think for the implementation, coordination is the key. And as we can see, well, it's very early findings, but it is one of the interesting points that we found with this ongoing research is actually when the leader of the province or the municipal understand the importance of data governance and that good data governance can actually help them to deliver public service, then they will more likely to implement, or to at least they will state that I want good data to be available so I can make a decision for my place or my region. I need this data to be available or to be updated regularly, so I can better monitor the development program. That is one of the key, I think. And the rest, well, we'll see where our research take us, or our findings take us.
Yeah, I mean, as you all listened, thank you, Clara. As you all listened to, in this morning sessions, for example, or other session before us, people mentioned three key pillars in digital transformation. Perhaps I will also think it's also applied to data governance as well, which is one is people, including leadership. Second is the process, which means also including regulations and other legal frameworks that regulates all this process of data governance. And I think it's enabling technologies. Our speaker had mentioned enabling technologies, basically to ensure safely and also protections of privacy and also personal data. And now to you, also same question to you, Vino, same in the context of decentralizations in the Philippines. What's the impact in terms of establishing data governance, the same data governance standard?
Okay, thank you so much for that question, Glenn. And yeah, and Katrina, thank you so much for submitting that question. I think the biggest challenge with when it comes to having this decentralized system is that there is not one specific norm when it comes to data collection, data sorting, data cleaning, even data verification, for example. And then when it comes to setting the scope of data and how it can be presented in a way that would complement the other available data out there related to COVID-19 response and relief, that is definitely a challenge, because having these inconsistencies make it virtually impossible to actually have a centralized system that can host these kinds of data, which is very important to be connected. Yeah, so just, you can see a bigger picture, the national picture, or if you want to see a regional or provincial level, that is really quite important. That is definitely challenging, especially if you want to facilitate data sharing among local governments. So hopefully in the future, we will figure out how to actually set the specific framework on how we want to collect and present data, because some local governments, take for example, collect specific data on a daily basis, some on a weekly basis. So it depends. So I think having a more standardized method on how we collect this, even having despite having a decentralized system, is very, very important. And then at the same time, I just wanted to add that exacting accountability when it comes to lapses on data governance is also something that is lacking in the Philippine setting. So in the past, even before the pandemic, we have heard and encountered a lot of data leaks that happened within the public sector. So take, for example, a few years ago, there was a massive data leak from the Commission on Elections in the Philippines. But the difficulty, despite having a Data Privacy Act, is that we don't actually know, or we don't hear if there are, if we're able to exact accountability from those responsible. And that is something that's actually happening as well amid the COVID-19 pandemic. So those who are responsible for leaking COVID-19 patient data, take for example, we don't know if they were really brought to justice. Those who are manipulating or editing some COVID-19 data to portray a better outcome for the Philippines when it comes to COVID-19 response and relief. So we don't know if they're being brought to justice or being held responsible for their actions. So that is another challenge, I guess, exacting accountability based on the policy that we actually have at the moment. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Vino. Yeah, we still have, I think, one more question. Yes, two actually from Trisha. Just another mention to the audience, if you have questions, so feel free to type your question in the chat box, and we will be discussing them later. So I turn over to the question from Trisha. Trisha DeVita. Trisha is asking about how data governance affects society on the aspect of welfareism. And as you can see there, Vino and Clara, second question is what should be improved on the data governance, especially during this is PPKM, or this is for you, Vino, this is restrictions of for social activities in Indonesia. So what should be improved on data governance, especially during the lockdown or restrictions of social activity period in Indonesia? Maybe Clara can tell us more about this. So again, start from you, Vino. So just switch now.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks for the question, Trisha. Well, the assumption, right, would be if we have good data governance standards and the systems are all in place, that government services and how it assures good access of the public when it comes to public services, take for example, would be really good. So I think that with that being said, data governance really plays a huge part when it comes to ensuring that the government is well aware about what things does it need to respond to. So take for example, in the context of COVID-19 response, if there is a showing that take for example, there are surge in cases in this current hotspot for COVID-19 cases. Take for example, it is a province or a city, it can respond accordingly. So take for example, if it is the demographic for that area is really urban poor, it is an urban poor community, having good data governance systems would help the government respond to that current situation and actually provide not just provide policy when it comes to lockdown restrictions, but also provide the needed support by that community in case you actually put them on lockdown. So take for example, providing relief or aid to that community or that part of the country. So I think that is definitely important. Yeah, I guess that's it for me for now. Passing it to Clara.
All right, Clara.
Okay, okay, I will respond to the first question. First, actually, data can help inform the public services. It can be of help in, such as targeting for social aid, and also, like what Vino has said, provide timely and more accurate public service to those who need. As we can see, for example, in Indonesia, we can see a lot of people get died just because they were not getting the the needed medical treatment in time. This is just to give example how actually good data and good data governance can help ordinary citizens like us get access or at least information on how to access the public services that we are needed. And when the data is available real time, it is accurate. We even citizens know how to respond, and the government can shape, I don't know, shape or regularly update it and the response to the changing situation. As we can see now, I will also give one more example. In vaccination, if the data governance is good, and also governance was consider on how to reach every single citizen, every single person in its country to get or to easily access vaccine, including the, how to say this, vulnerable groups like elderly or even indigenous people that may not have identity card or identity number, a unique identity number. A good data governance actually can help government with this issue on how to deliver such essential service to the most needed first. And for the second question, what need to be improved? Personally, I think there are a lot of things that government can improve in terms of data governance. For example, privacy policy in well, we now have so many applications related to the pandemic, like eHealth, Peduli Lindungi, or if you are a Jakartan, then you have Jaki. Privacy policy can be improved, and there, who is responsible for what should be stated clearly or explicitly. And also, other thing that the government can improve is data related to COVID-19, daily data about how many affected, or how many have been deceased due to COVID. But I will give more examples in sector that I am familiar with, like in education, for example. Data can be improved, so the education office in the local level, I mean in the provincial and municipal level, can access the relevant the data that is relevant to their region. That way they can better decide what kind of support that is needed by school, or what kind of support that is needed by children or by students. Because we see now a lot of children actually affected. Some of them become orphans because their parents as depends on their COVID and cannot recover. and school or learning might something that is not in their mind right now because they are struggling to survive. Now, this is where actually better data governance can help. The help is in form of informing the decision maker or informing subnational government and national government on how to devise better strategy and develop a better response to cater citizens' need. So yeah, I think there is a lot, and I can keep going, but yeah, I think we all can think about on how we can improve the data governance. So I think that's just a bit from me.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. So, I remember in terms of, data inclusivity and also, granularity, somebody said, we don't know much about, the impact of COVID, for example, to, low income populations versus, high income, or young versus, older people, or urban rural. So these are all some of the key issues that we need, and we need data for that. But then, with lack of, data governance in terms of collecting this data, then it becomes a, problem for us in terms of how we can react to, this pandemic, or learn more about how the pandemic affect, our society. Yeah, also we thank you, Clara and Fino. So if you can please bear with me for more questions from the participants here. So we have another question from Mbak Nur maybe. So the question is, so the issue of data protections is relatively exclusive for certain groups of populations, especially middle or high income populations, and even there is also a low awareness among the government officials. So how can this situation be improved? But maybe you can start, Fino, and then Clara.
Okay, thanks for that, Glenn. And thank you for that question, Noor. From my end, I want to approach this at two fronts. First would be having necessary information when it comes to increasing awareness about data protection and privacy on accessible languages. So take, for example, in the Philippines, most of the information materials or media campaigns that I see about data protection and privacy, it's in English. And actually, even the available information in Philippine government websites about data protection and privacy are mostly in English. It's very rare that you see a poster or an information material that's in Tagalog or in Filipino, or we have a lot of local languages in the Philippines. We have Cebuano, Ilocano, Bisaya. So those are not even covered. And Filipino being the main local language, it's not. It's actually very rare to see information materials that about any topic, actually, not just for data protection and privacy, that's being published in Philippine government websites. So I think localizing information materials about data protection and privacy would be the first step, but at the same time would be putting the discourse to the point of discussing data protection and privacy in relation to the context that's relevant to segments of the population that is, not included in a middle class or high class of the society. So take for example, relating why data protection and privacy is important to urban poor population, take for example. So I guess one conversation point to start with is that take for example, discuss data protection and privacy in the context of social media websites or social media platforms, take for example, because that is something that can definitely be a conversation starter. They know Facebook, they use Facebook. In the Philippines, We have free Facebook. That's part. Even if you don't have any prepaid load, you can actually use free Facebook. You don't get to see the photos, but you can see the posts. So talking about Facebook in the context of data protection and data privacy would be a conversation starter, and you can definitely build on that when it comes to tailor fitting the discussion or the information being given to them about data protection and privacy on their daily lives beyond social media websites or social media platforms. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Vino. Over to Clara.
I agree with Philo completely. I mean, having the issue of privacy and personal data protection being discussed in a more accessible language is very important. Prior to my work in CIPG, actually, I'm working with a Women Crisis Center, and we have set of education kit about what is sexual harassment, what is online sexual harassment. Back then, it wasn't a very popular issue, but we managed to translate the education kit in Japanese because we worked in Jakarta back then, and it is very helpful. So more women and more children got engaged, and they can easily understand it. And we also use pictures, and we have actually just small campaigns to one area, one village, and then we also have a small campaign in the city. But when the discussion or the conversation are set in relaxing atmosphere, actually more people can engage, because we also give a lot of example on how this is relevant, or how this could happen to them, how this could affect their daily life. I think that's the key. So yeah, in a nutshell, it's building awareness, it's building literacy. That's from.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Clara. I guess people mentioned about issues about user-centered design. I think Fino touched on that a little bit there. I think it's kind of key as well in understanding the needs of these, especially sort of disadvantaged populations in the community, so that data governance policy or framework can also be more inclusive to all, and we can achieve SDGs, basically goals of leaving no one behind. Okay, I don't think we have more questions from the audience participants. Oh, sorry, there's another one there. Okay, from Pawirawan. This is about how can government learn from private sectors. I know you both are from civil society research institutions, but can you tell us a little bit more? I know that previously also talked about multi-stakeholders collaboration needed. So how can government learn from others stakeholders, in this case private sectors, concerning data governance? Please, Fino.
Okay, thanks for that question, Aga, and thank you for passing it to me, Glenn. Well, I think one thing that the government can learn from the private sector, specifically tech companies, would be the importance of having clear policies and guidelines when it comes to data governance. So when you work in a tech company or in a private corporation, there are, especially in the Philippine context, there are clear set of rules, because the National Privacy Commission in the Philippines really worked with data privacy officers per company when it comes to setting up clear policies and guidelines when it comes to data collection, data storage, even destroying data that are not necessary to be kept. Yeah, there are clear guidelines when it comes to that. So there is kind of a contradiction here because the policy is emanating from having a Republic Act that is from the government. But at the same time, the government itself is not that good when it comes to observing the law or the Data Privacy Act. So that's why most of the data breaches, data leaks that's happening in the Philippines are mostly coming from the public sector or from the government side. So yeah, maybe that is something that they can learn. And when it comes to multi-stakeholder collaboration, I guess it is also quite important to foster that that space for different sectors, maybe civil society, academia, tech, other members of the private sector, even youth leaders and community leaders to actually contribute in how we shape data governance policy. So I think the problem in the existing data governance policies that we have in the Philippines as well, especially that's particular with the COVID-19 pandemic, is that it is made by people who are not implementing it. So it was made by lawmakers who are not really digital natives, made by agency leaders who are not really that accustomed to dealing with data or did not have experience when it comes to digital rights or digital safety. So I think bringing in voices from civil society, from the academe, advocates into the picture and considering it when it comes to drafting data governance policy would be a great step. Yeah. So consultations would be the first step. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Indeed. So, Clara, if you would like to add something.
To add the quick points. Actually, government can learn about the placing dedicated person for data governance. This is usually is the case when the company they have a dedicated person with the proper qualifications. They understand the process of the data governance and how technology should help the process. This is yeah. I think that's all that I want to add. Because yeah, Indonesia doesn't have specific regulation, so I think that's all more about institutional capacity.
All right. Okay. So I think we have another questions just coming in from Pak Firdaus. But before I ask these questions, I think we have covered a lot about data governance within our countries, our own countries. So I'm gonna shift the discussion a little bit to collaboration among countries. So in this case, cross-border data sharing. So as you know, data sharing, especially health data sets among countries, are the key in fighting the pandemic. So in your opinion, to what extent the current regulatory frameworks in the Southeast Asia are sufficient to enable effective data flows among countries, while also ensuring protections of personal data privacy? So, all right, perhaps Fino first.
Okay. So I feel like for me, with the existing ones, I think it's there's definitely a lot of room for improvement. I think when it comes to data sharing, what we have would be mostly related on mobility or travel. Like, I definitely see a lot of room for improvement, especially on the aspect of availability of COVID-19 vaccines. So I noticed that within our region, there are other countries who are much more ahead when it comes to rollout of COVID-19 vaccination. Meanwhile, there are countries who are lagging behind, not just because of supply, but also they have less than optimal systems when it comes to COVID-19 vaccination. So I guess having more efficient data sharing and even knowledge sharing among countries, especially in the aspect of COVID-19 vaccination, would definitely help. Especially that some countries in the region are experiencing COVID-19 surges. So if there are also learnings about more effective ways of community quarantines, how to promote better health practices in the communities, that can also definitely be shared among countries in the region. So I think, that is something that we can do and promote.
Right, thanks, Vino. Over to you, Clara, if you would like to add something regarding the cross-border data sharing mechanism.
Yeah, I think it is actually important for countries in ASEAN to work on how this cross-border data will be managed or implemented, especially because we have very rise in terms of law and regulation regarding data protection and privacy and personal data protection. I think it will be helpful if ASEAN discuss what should be the principles of cross-border data flow, and every country then can get agree or disagree, or basically discuss, and then this will be the set of principles that being adopted in the country. I think that will set like more clear on how citizens' data will be protected. So when ordinary citizens get to know, Indonesia, for example, has agreement on cross-border data, especially on health data with Philippines. But I don't really understand how this will affect us. That's again, it will erode public trust if it's not really clear. So I think work on at the country level and also at the regional level about the basic principle.
Okay, thank you, Clara, for your inputs. I know that we still have one more questions from Pak Firdaus, but regarding how data can create digital transformation in higher education. But I think, in the interest of time, we need to wrap up our question and answer session. But I know that Clara has also shared, a lot of materials on what's the status of, data governance especially in the education sectors in Indonesia. And currently, CIPG is also doing a research on these specific sectors. So please get in touch with Clara to get an updates more on the results of the research. Okay. Thank you very much. Let's give a virtual clap to both of our panelists, and also thank you very much also to all participants for your interesting questions and also comments. You are also free, basically, if you have more questions, to contact the both of panelists, Vino and Clara. or our colleagues at TIVA Foundations if you have further questions. All right, so to end this session, I think it would be fitting as a group, I think, if we could think ahead and make a kind of proposal on how to reform data governance in Southeast Asia. So we have another Menti exercise. Please, our colleague will show the question on the screen soon. Yeah. So if you can head back to the Menti by clicking the link here. Yeah, here, clicking the link in the chat box. And if you can answer the question there. So the question is basically, should you have one chance to demand and make a proposal to be translatable to reform data governance in Southeast Asia, what will it be? So just a short answer to these questions. So we'll give everyone about 5 minutes to type your answer and submit it. Just for your information, based on your statement here, your inputs here, the TIVA team will then summarize these statements and publish them, in the mainstream media, social media, to gain more public awareness about the importance of improving data governance in Southeast Asia. So please. Yeah, we have some answers coming in. Thank you. Yep. All right, so yeah, so more easy, inclusive, and safer cross-border data sharing mechanism. Yep, we touched a little bit on that in the Q&A session just now. Okay, National Privacy Commission or Data Protection Authority, yes. So this is one of the proposals. So we should have some kind of National Privacy Commission or Data Protection Authority. I know that this is one of the heated debates in the draft of data protection law in Indonesia. So make a robust and integrated database that could be used to connect us all. So this is about data availability and also interoperability and sharing among stakeholders, not only within the government, but also from the government to other non-government actors as well. Safer data storage mechanism, okay, for data sharing. Thank you. All right, defining, handling, and preventing terrorism threats also. Okay, responding to other threats. There's also a proposal to revise data governance in digital enablement to create digital transformation ecosystem. Okay, and then there is also integrated a proposal about integrated data mechanisms. And also somebody mentioned about improvement of our security and privacy, data privacy, and more powerful regulations about governance. All right, if you can scroll up, Fuji, something, yeah. All right, cross-border data flow, yeah. We've touched a little bit on this as well. And another one is passed the draft of Personal Data Protection Act in Indonesia. Yes. All right, we have 1 more minute. Okay, another proposal coming in is data will be transparent and accountable so that public can use it more confident, in more confident way, right? Right, all right. I guess thank you all for your proposal. If you have time, please just sending it up to our colleague in TIVA by answering to that question, Menti question in the link. So then the TIVA team will summarize sort of your input and statements and use it for increase public awareness about importance of an accountable and a transparent data governance. So in closing, I think for me, COVID-19 pandemic has exposed long-standing data governance issues. So we talked a lot about challenges in data lifecycle, from data collections, storage, use, as well as sharing. But we also talked a lot about key pillars, key factors that can enable a good data governance, including human resource capacity, enabling technologies, regulations on data privacy, as well as cross-border data sharing as in this region. So globally, I think persistent data gaps and fragmented approach to governing public data, including health data in different contexts, are still a major roadblock to using data for public good, so that accountability in public data governance during the pandemic is really, really important. Public data, including health data, needs to be collected, stored, analyzed, and shared transparently based on the foundations of a strong and good inclusive data governance that include technical, regulatory, and policy framework to protect personal privacy. So with that, I thank you everyone for joining these sessions, and I hope to see you again in the next discussions on this very important topic very soon. So stay safe and healthy. Now back to you, Nurma.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Glenn. It was really interesting and intriguing discussion about the issue of data governance in Southeast Asia, especially in Indonesia, also in the Philippines. Yeah, it's almost 2 hours. It flies really fast. We've been sitting together in this afternoon and listening to the discussion. And here I want to give several announcements. The first one is make sure that you have filled out the form, the Google form, the absent Google form provided by the committee. so we can further share information about the following information regarding this event and also the other events that we will have. And before closing this discussion, if you are comfortable, please, we will take a picture together. So please turn on the camera or the video. And later I will count to 3. So the one of the hosts can take the picture. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, all the participants, and also especially the speakers and also the moderator, Mr. Glenn. Thank you for joining our discussion today, and we hope it's kind of valuable discussion for us, especially for TIFA and CIPG to develop our report on the issue. And we really thank you for all the participants who have filled out our surveys. And yeah, this is time for closing. Thank you, everyone, and stay healthy, and yeah, be safe. Thank you so much. I'm sorry if I made some mistake during this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.